Hi everybody, welcome to your first wider curriculum video, which is going to be our last geography lesson for our unit where we compared South Gloucestershire, where we are, to different parts of Greece, particularly we looked at Athens. So before we begin, I just want to refresh. Some of it we did last term, some of it we did just on Monday. But if we refresh what we've done so far, our first lesson, we focused on kind of finding South Gloucestershire and Athens on maps, thinking about things like population, land size, all of those kind of things. Then we moved on to looking at the human and physical features of Greece. Remember, human is something that is man-made. Physical is something that is naturally occurring. We identified lots of different things and some facts about Greece there. And then lesson 3, which was just Monday, 2 days ago, feels like much longer, we were looking at how the geography of Athens had changed over time. So we particularly focused on the Parthenon and the uses of that, but we then looked at kind of how the use of land has changed over time in Greece, how now it relies a lot more heavily on tourism and things like that, whereas before it was designed for different purposes. Okay, so if we get going straight away onto our starter, I mentioned tourists just a minute ago. So why do so many tourists visit Athens every year? If you want to pause me and then come back with your ideas. So hopefully you got a few of the things that we covered last time. So firstly, the weather, the climate, it's often dry and very sunny, which often brings lots of people in. We also had things like famous landmarks. So again, we focused a lot on the Parthenon, but you've got, people want to learn more about history and what came before us. So people go to visit those. And lastly, we spoke about Greece being a peninsula, so almost entirely surrounded by water. Again, beaches. It brings the tourists in. I kind of wish I was on a beach right now, but hey, here we are. So that's why people visit Athens. Now, just before the end of last term, we actually received a letter from some Athenians, people from Athens, who want to visit Bristol next year. Hopefully they will be able to. What places do you think we should recommend to them? You guys know Bristol well. What would you say are all the best places to go? Again, if you want to pause me and make a mind map, so you could literally write Bristol and then either pictures, words, a mixture, where would you recommend they go? Okay, so hopefully, perhaps you got some of these. These were my suggestions just off the top of my head. I think, and this is somewhere I bring whenever we've got family or friends visiting, the Clifton Suspension Bridge. It's really cool. And I think you kind of get used to it living in Bristol, but actually it's a beautiful piece of architecture. We've then got We the Curious. I know you guys have been on a couple of trips there. Aerospace, amazing. I took my dad there and he absolutely loved it. Where you can go and see the Concorde and then the Avon Valley Railway. I've not actually been there. Perhaps if you guys have, you can tell me whether it's worth going to at all. So perhaps you got these ideas. There's loads more. There's obviously zoos, wildlife centres, loads of different things. Okay, so although sometimes it's tricky to kind of consider when you live somewhere, actually there are lots of tourist attractions in Bristol, and Bristol is certainly becoming an ever more popular place for people to come and visit. Okay, so just like Athens brings in tourists, Bristol actually does as well. All right, now at this point I'd have loved us to had a very heated class debate where we go back and forth and back and forth and we go, right, Athens or Bristol? So I want you guys to imagine there's 2 buses outside, and imagine we were in different times where we could visit wherever we wanted, okay? One is going to Athens. One is going to go to all the best places in Bristol. Which bus would you get onto and why? Now, again, as I mentioned in English, it might be that actually you choose this point to have a bit of a debate with your friends, perhaps on FaceTime or message or whatever. Where are you going to go? Why? Have a bit of a chat or think about if you're at home and you're doing this solo, maybe just write some ideas. It's okay if you're not sure. If you're not sure which one you'd go on to, you can also write that. Okay, so at this point, I would give me a pause, think about which one do you think is the most tempting and why? What's it got there that you're so interested in? Okay, so for me personally, I've got to say it again, imagining that things were a little bit different. For me, it would be Athens. Reasons being, I am a sun worshipper. I love the sun. It does get incredibly hot there, but I'd love me some good weather right now. I'm also really interested, and I think having done this history unit with you guys has only made me more enthusiastic about going back and visiting the Parthenon. And also, I've got to say it, it's the good food. The Greeks know how to cook their food, let me tell you. So good food, good weather, history, it would tempt me. But then again, I do also love Bristol. And I know, having only lived here for 5 years, I think. Yeah, 5 years now. I know there is still lots more for me to explore. So both of them have got tourist attractions that would be very tempting. Okay. Now, one thing that's slightly different between Bristol and South Gloucestershire, and Greece are the geological threats. So we've kind of spoken a bit about tourism, but a geological threat is something that endangers life or land in a certain place. So if you look here, have a look at the pictures. Firstly, have a think about what it is these pictures are of, and think about, do we have them in South Gloucestershire? Why not? You want to have a think, pause me, and then come back and we can chat. Okay, so if you look here, we've got kind of wildfires, forest fires over here. We've got flooding. We've got kind of drought. We've got incredibly dry land. You can see it's all cracked, and that often comes from a lack of rainfall. And then here we've got some severe damage to the road, likely caused by something like an earthquake. If we think about it, in Bristol and South Gloss, I would say potentially flooding. Again, I mean, not so much around this area, but we do often have quite a lot of rainfall in the UK, and therefore there can be flooding. I've never seen it quite this extreme around here, but I know over the years, certainly in my memory, there have been some extreme floods across the UK. So that's one possible threat. In terms of a drought, sadly, I think the amount of rainfall we get, I haven't really seen a drought, certainly not this extreme. Okay, so I wouldn't say a drought is so much of a threat. Again, earthquakes, not in my lifetime that I can remember, and certainly not this extreme. And we're going to talk about why that's the case in a minute. And again, in terms of wildfires, forest fires, not so much of a threat where we are now. Okay, so why is that the case? You know, how can there be threats in some places and not in others? Let's have a little look closer. Right, again, you can pause me as you go. What do you think causes wildfires and droughts, and why do Greece have them and we don't? Hopefully, perhaps some of the ideas you've come up with, I mentioned in my reason for wanting to go to Athens, the heat, the climate there is much drier, and it's also much hotter. And if you've got that combination of dry and heat, that's something that can often cause fires, particularly in things like forests. And they're called wildfires because they spread quickly, okay? And if you've got lots of kind of wood close together, it's going to catch really quickly. Again, the droughts are caused by what? A lack of rainfall. Again, that's not something we have any issue with, but in Greece they do have issues with that, and we spoke about the fact that that can cause issues with fertility in the land. So while you might think, oh wow, a drought, dry land, it's not so much of an issue, well, what about growing crops? What about you know, that's kind of food, that's people's livelihood, so that affects people's jobs, and it can be really quite extreme. Okay, so 2 threats to Greece that we don't have in South Gloucestershire. Right, now this one, earthquakes. Hopefully you've heard of those before. I'm going to try and explain roughly what an earthquake is. So an earthquake is caused by something called tectonic plates. Okay, tectonic plates, it's a nice word to say. Essentially what it means, I'm going to move this down here, move it across. Sorry if you can't see this. So we've got our Earth, our globe, our sphere, and basically it's covered, it's got lots of different layers, and the top layer has got lots of pieces of land that cover that top layer, kind of like a giant round puzzle, okay? So that you've got kind of pieces that all fit together, okay? But they don't stay still all the time, okay? They often kind of move around together, and when they bump into each other, you know, these are huge pieces of land. That's what can kind of cause these earthquakes, okay, which can cause damage and huge amounts of damage. And the thing that we put here, sorry, I've covered it up there. Think about it like ice cubes moving around on the top of a glass of water. So if you look up here, these ice cubes are kind of moving slowly around. It's only a couple of centimetres a year, okay? So it's not very much, and they're not necessarily very frequent. But when they do happen, they can cause severe damage and risks to lives, okay? So, again, earthquakes, a serious geological threat in Greece, not so much in South Gloucestershire, okay? Right. This is, I guess, the main thing we wanted to get here is, you know, can I compare tourism and geological threats? I think we can agree that Athens and Bristol both have lots of tourist attractions, although Athens, you know, perhaps in terms of I think the double whammy of the climate and the beaches, triple whammy even, and then the famous landmarks draws in lots of people, but it does have more geological threats than South Gloucestershire. Okay, so today, your final activity, what we would like you to do is, in your books, write a pros and cons, so reasons for and reasons against living in Athens. Okay, so you could think about that two ways. You could think about reasons for and against living there as a citizen, someone that lives there all the time. Perhaps it's really annoying when all the tourists come in. Or you could think about it as a tourist, like why would it be nice to go and live there for a week or a month or whatever. Then your final piece to do is think about whether you would like to move there or not. So, would you like to stay put in South Gloucestershire? Would you like to move to Athens? Why or why not? Okay, I want you to use some of the examples that we've looked at, not just in today's lesson where we've looked at the tourism and the geological threats. I want you to think about those human and physical features of each. Perhaps some of the facts that you learned in lesson 1 where you're thinking about the population there, things like that. All right. I'd love to see some of your examples. What I'm going to do is I'm going to upload onto the website. It's just literally a picture of each of them, which you can use in your comparison or, you know, your summary of whether you want to move there or not. You don't have to use them, but they're there if you'd like. Okay. And we'd love to see some of your examples. We've so enjoyed doing this geography unit with you guys. And I'm really gutted that we couldn't finish it off in school, but I can't wait to see what you think. All right. Have a brilliant day, guys. I look forward to seeing your work. And there will be more from me tomorrow. There's going to be a little history number. We're going to finish off our Greek history as well. All right. Take it steady, guys. Bye-bye.